Another round of applause for our I'm going to go ahead and invite Lulu back for next spring, because I think we're going to want to know what happens to you in this next year. Will you come back and let us know? Okay. Donna, she's coming back next spring. Right? You can come back in between, and you can let us know what we can do to help you. We want to be part of your support.
Awesome.
Okay? All right. Well, that's pretty remarkable, but I'm not surprised when you see what young people are capable of. If you think about all the skills that she just demonstrated in doing this and how reflection, we do need the time for reflection, but there are a lot of skills that go into making somebody able to be a service learner like this. So I'd like to take a moment when we think about reflection. If we want young people to really be reflective, we have to think of what are the skills they also need. Now, we've talked about some more, maybe a little more eccentric or eclectic ways for you to start thinking about reflection, but I'd like you to think now, what are the most common ways you do reflection with your students? What are some ways you can use these multiple intelligences in everyday reflection? We already said the most common ways to reflect are what? Keeping a journal and doing what? Discussion. There are other ways that we could do reflection all the time. Who has an example? You can use what other modalities? A blog. Students using blogging or tweeting is great because it's technology they know and they love. What else can they do?
We go out on the campus a lot, like them getting their bodies outside and finding the things they're talking about in the classroom.
Oh, that's great. So they can actually find things and see it and help with reflection. Yes?
Performing skits, because then they're actually physicalizing what happened with the set.
Acting things out. Acting out scenarios. Practicing them. Putting themselves in situations helps them anticipate and also reflect on what went on. So acting things out is very powerful. The role plays are very, very critical to doing any type of reflection. What other modalities can you use? Writing songs, creating lyrics, music. In fact, it's one way to make sure if kids write their own music, then they can make the YouTube videos and put them up with their own original songs and you don't have those copyright issues. What else? What other modalities? One of my favorite ways is when kids come in from doing an experience, I put out large sheets of butcher paper and give everybody a marker. I tell them draw, absolute silence. After a few minutes of drawing, you tell when the energy's changing, then you say add a word, and all of a sudden there's some words sparkled on. And then you might say, okay, let's write a poem. You might write a collective or individual lines of poetry, or if you're studying haiku, now suddenly you're using reflection to create haiku. So I like the art, and then that leads into writing, and into words into writing. Whenever we do, whatever kind of reflection we do, we have to think of what are the skills we need to make sure students have so reflection is rich. So what are the skills students need to be reflective? What skill sets do we need to make sure they have? Active listening. So we need to practice and role model active listening so students have that skill before we put them in a situation where they could actually tank. We want them to succeed, so we exercise active listening. What other skill might they need? Patience. Knowing that they need to take turns to share, to listen. It's important for the little ones to start practicing that. What other skills do they need? I'll put some up here. Let's see what we've got. The ability to stop. The time to just stop. Giving them the understanding that the ability to stop is fine. How many kids have trouble just stopping? How many adults have trouble just stopping, right? So the ability to stop. Taking risks. Being able to share your ideas, your thoughts, your feelings is a bit of a risk-taking. So we need to make sure that there's a trusting environment where students know their words will be honored and that everyone is there on their team. To observe. Also to discern what is important. I'm loving this word discern now. That's one of my new favorite words. How do you discern? To sift and sort what's really important and what really matters. What's worth that memory? What really matters in this story? To make mistakes. To be able to make mistakes is a tremendous skill so that we can admit some things did not go well and then we can look at what can we do to make those better. To extend ideas, to stretch them in the past and thinking in the future. So stretching our ideas in both directions. This is very forward-thinking for 21st century problem solving. The ability to extend ideas. Well, what were we anticipating that led us to this moment? And where do you think we can go next? So to be able to extend the ideas in both directions is high-level thinking. To learn, unlearn, and to relearn. And this is something that Alvin Toffler, who's been a long-time futurist, said this is one of the most important skills to have. to learn something, and then to recognize this isn't serving me, to unlearn it and to relearn something else. This skill is, again, very important as we're looking to creating a future that's very impactful and coming up with solutions. To learn, unlearn, and relearn. Emotional literacy. You know, very often with reflections, and maybe you've had this experience, maybe not, but I definitely have. The students go out in the community, they may do something worthwhile, and they come back to reflect and they said, we went on the bus, we got off, we saw the people, it was nice. How many of you have seen that kind of reflection? It was nice. Or, it was good. You know, same kind of thing. So what that leads me to know is that a lot of young people may not have emotional literacy. What do I mean by that? The words, the language to express what they think in colorful and descriptive language. So we're going to try and do something about that. Let's see. I'm going to get to it, but first I'm going to share one other idea first. And that is when, you know, I was just in this big conversation about reflection, and people were talking about how much reflection kids should do. They were looking at quantity. And I'm thinking that's the wrong question. I think the question is on your next sheet of paper, when does reflection matter? Not how much do we do or how often, but when. So I'd like you all just to think for a moment in your own time, without even looking at the paper yet. Think for a moment, just take out your own think tank, your own 1-minute pause. When does reflection matter? Not how much we do, how long it is. It doesn't have to be 5 paragraphs. When does reflection matter? All right, so when is a moment that reflection would matter? Who has an idea? Anyone? Yes? Pardon me? Before direct service, before you do something, so you can reflect on what you're feeling or what you're thinking about right in that moment. Yes?
When you need to put words to an experience that you've had.
When you want to put words, when the experience just demands you put into words, it's just crying out for words. What else? Yes?
When you hit a wall, like
When you're just stuck, when you don't know what to do next. Perfect time for reflection. What else? Yes? When you feel like you're finished. When it looks like it's finished. When you look like, oh my gosh, we really may be done.
when you want to check your progress.
When you want to check into progress, when you need a checking point, when you need a little balance and you need to check in. All right, I'm going to share with you some other ideas I have and what you think about these. When a situation seems beyond time and space. What I mean by that, if you're doing something, you went, oh my gosh, where'd the time go? You know, you're so involved, you just forget about time, and it's like, oh my gosh, that was 3 hours, it felt like 10 minutes. What in that, something happened in there that you want to capture in reflection. When an aha moment of discovery happened, when you have that aha, oh my gosh, that's a great time to say, oh my gosh, what just happened? That's perfect for reflection. When learning, unlearning, and relearning has occurred, and we want to reflect over this incredible landscape of what we've just done. When heightened attention and awareness raises propelling questions, and all these are written down on your paper, I've already written these down. When it's heightened awareness and all of a sudden you've got more questions than you know what to do with, that's a great time for reflection. When observation of another person's actions demonstrate a notable aspect of behavior, like the kid who was always really quiet just suddenly came out of his or her shell, and oh my gosh, did you see what she did? I mean, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And also about your own behavior, when you notice something so new in your own behavior. When words resonate with an idea or thought or something, that's kind of like the compelling idea. We need to put words to an idea, a thought, or a question. And when joy is present, when you have so much joy that it's so exciting, that's a great time to say, wow. I mean, we don't always reflect when we're miserable. I think that's the part. We can reflect when we're joyful. Anywhere along the spectrum, we want to reflect in every possible way that we can capture emotion. So I think these are critical. Does this make sense? I'm just trying this out on you. You're my first one for this stuff. I'm writing an article now, so this is going to be. So let's talk now about emotions for a moment and how do we express emotions. When you think of students, do you think about this for a moment. Do you think your students have an extensive emotional vocabulary or a small emotional vocabulary? How many of you think smaller? How many think fabulous? Oh, good. We've got a couple good fabulous. Well, some of you live, most of you didn't raise your hand, or many did, so some of you live between not too much and very well, somewhere in there, right? So let's talk about how to increase this. Now, there's two very important points we need to make. There's tremendous confusion about what a feeling is in the first place. So we're going to clarify that. Tremendous confusion, and I think it's left over from the 60s. How many of you remember the 60s? They say if you remember the 60s, you weren't there, so. That's a joke. Okay, so in the 60s, there was a misunderstanding of Gestalt therapy. And in that misunderstanding, people developed the phrase, you're entitled to your feelings. How many of you remember that? So people could stand up on a soapbox and pontificate on some kind of political viewpoint they had and say, I'm entitled to my feelings, and nobody could argue with them. Because all you have to say was, that's how I feel. You can't argue my feeling, I'm entitled to my feelings. So we started couching our feelings and masquerading them as feelings when they were really thoughts. And the culprit is a word. And this is the word that's the culprit, that gets in the way. Can everybody see that? It's kind of light. That. In our vernacular, people all the time say, I feel that. Can anybody show me with a physical expression what the feeling is of this word? There's no feeling associated with this word, is that correct? So you cannot feel that. Now, because of the more in our vernacular, we also say, I feel like. You can't feel these words. There's only two ways to express a feeling. I am, and I am angry or I feel angry. That's the only way to say it. We need to teach kids that you cannot feel that. This is critical if you want young people to be expressive and to understand the difference between thoughts and feelings. They then become the that police, and they will nail you every time you do it. And that's a fact too. I've seen kids do that. They get this really quickly. Just as an aside, kids who understand this are better writers, and better writers of analytical writing, because they understand the difference between thoughts and feelings. So first you need to clarify this. So this has a giant number 1 bar. This is the first part of developing emotional literacy. The second part is understanding what emotions are. So I want everybody right now to think of an emotion. Everybody, think of an emotion. The count of 3, say it really loud. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay, now let's say a couple I can hear. Okay, so who's got an emotion? Anybody?
Happy.
Happy. What's another one?
Frustration.
Frustration. I need a few more.
Angry.
Angry. What's another one?
Inspired.
Inspired. It was easy. We were all inspired by Lulu. What else?
Scared.
What was that?
Scared.
Okay, we're going to use these 5 right now. And this is one way I teach emotional literacy. I want everybody to show me by how you're sitting and the expression on your face. You can actually role play this. Imagine you have a barometer with 5 being a lot and 1 being a little. All these little markers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Show me on your face your expression, happy 3. Show me happy 3, how you're sitting. Show me frustrated 4. Frustrated 5. Inspired 2. Scared 3. Scared 4. Scared 5. Angry 2. Happy 5. I could drive you crazy, could I? Why is this fun for kids to do? What happens when you do this kind of process? What does it do?
It takes them out of their shell.
Takes them out of their shell. What else? Could be specific. Anything else? What are we developing?
How to read body language.
How to read body language and how to be expressive, and that there's a range of emotions out there and we want to capture it, and reflection is part of how we tell the story. So we need to give them, and then you can have on your wall all these fabulous words that they add to from the literature they read or the emotions they feel, and then you have a box where you retire certain words like good and nice and interesting, and they go away forever. Replaced by ecstatic and thrilled and happy and frustrated, and words that give life and breathing to the real moment that they're in. So play with this idea of emotional literacy.